He is the CEO and founder of WebiMax. He's an internet marketer. And Ken Wisnefski joins us here on CBS Sports Radio. Ken, your company, WebiMax, advises people how to make the most out of social media and interaction with fans, with potential clients and the like on the internet. Has Twitter rewritten the rules as far as you're concerned?
I think Twitter has really provided something really unique, specifically in the athletic space and then also for celebrities, because it's given people, the common folk, an opportunity to feel somewhat more engaged with kind of what the thinking is behind the scenes with celebrities or with athletes, and it also gives them a platform to be able to speak their mind a little bit more freely about certain things that are going on. I mean, we see it all the time now where ultimately athletes take to Twitter to respond to something that maybe went on in a game or something that's going on with them in general. So I do think Twitter's been a game changer just from ultimately how information is passed, specifically, athletes and celebrities being the ones that I think it's really impacted the most.
One of the things we hear a lot today in the world of sports is, for both teams and individual players, is your brand. You're increasing your brand. You're increasing the way your brand is looked at and the value of your brand. Do you use that term? And if you could, best define it for us.
Sure, definitely. The value of your brand now has really changed. The brand before was like, where people would say, oh, when you wanted to blow your nose, you would always use a Kleenex, because Kleenex had done such a good job really branding themselves, were the ones that really kind of held that brand positioning. Nowadays, brands really expand well beyond that. When you look at someone like LeBron James has a brand that he portrays not on the basketball court, but also he's a personality, and that brand is something that transfers across into social media. And he's been someone who's done a good job really being able to stay above the board, even though some people might question his decisions as far as where he goes to play and how he goes about things. At the end of the day, he's done a really good job of furthering his brand and probably making himself a lot more money in the process, because he's really been able to keep something that's somewhat a very clean image and again, very, very relevant.
Now, we'll use LeBron James as an example, since you brought him up, and I agree with you. He's very good at handling his own brand. He is also a player now for the Cleveland Cavaliers, and he is certainly a player for the National Basketball Association, and they all have their own individual brands. How do those things best mesh? Can they run in conflict? Can LeBron be doing something on social media or in any way, shape, or form that he thinks is best for his brand, but isn't necessarily best for the Cleveland Cavaliers and or the NBA? How does everybody keep their brand in line?
It's a great question, and the reality of it is LeBron James is a good example of somebody who does do his best to walk the fine line between what's best for his brand and what's best perhaps for the organization he's playing for. But you see it a lot. You see a lot of athletes that go out and maybe question plays, question the coach, whatever the scenario might be, on Twitter, make a lot of comments that a lot of times are later deleted. But on a lot of times I think you see that basically their brand and kind of the brand of the franchise they're playing for does conflict. As a matter of fact, I think a great example of this was last year with Johnny Manziel. He got all the hype after winning the Heisman. He was all over social media. And if you notice, after he got that suspension for the first half of the game, he just pretty much disappeared from social media until he announced he was turning pro. And notice he's gone pretty silent again. So he's realized to keep his brand as what it is, he probably needs to stay a little bit further away from some of the things he was portraying on social media to increase the value of his brand.
We're talking to Ken Wisnefski. He is the CEO and founder of WebiMax, an internet marketing company. He's our guest here on CBS Sports Radio. You deal with social media in all walks, as you say, with companies and with celebrities and athletes, and you judge them as to how they use it and use it well or use it poorly. What is, in your experience, the biggest mistake that athletes make in the use of social media?
I think there's really two areas that they really make mistakes. And one I can't say is necessarily a mistake because people actually like it, but it's when they go and will comment in that time of still the heat of the moment right after a game where they may make comments. And again, I think they need to be careful doing that. But again, I think in some respects, it's somewhat endearing to a fan to see somebody really give you some more insight that maybe wasn't portrayed to the media for whatever reason, and really give you facts that maybe went on within the game and the athlete's actual thinking. So while that can be somewhat of a challenge at times, I think it's a good thing. But where I think a lot of times they make mistakes is, and this goes for celebrities or anybody as well, is when they're not really educated on a really hot topic, something that's really pertinent in the news that has a lot of very strong feelings, and they go and they make comments to support a certain side on that without a lot of fact. I think that's where I've seen a lot of problems come up with athletes, celebrities, or even in some cases companies that go and make comments about a very, very hot or poignant topic in the news without a lot of fact to support their comments on Twitter.
Have you heard of any teams and or leagues that have gone as far as to try and ban someone from using social media if they've made mistakes before? Contracts, hey, anything's open in a contract negotiation. You get what you get on either side of the ledger. Do you know of any situations where teams have tried to curb, if not completely shut down, someone's ability through social media to talk to the fans or their public or anybody else? And how is that played?
I think that we're starting to see in the NCAA teams actually advising players against being involved in social media just for the reasons that we talked about. It seems that mostly at the collegiate level, there's really no good that can come from it. You can find yourself in hot water over certain things. Obviously, you're a lot more regulated because you're a student athlete. You're not a professional athlete. So I think you're starting to see the onset of that a lot more at the college level. As far as in the professional level, I think there is going to need to be at some point probably more stricter rules that will be probably contract-driven, where players will have more restrictions on them based upon that. Because, again, to your point before, Jody, I think there is a very fine line between sometimes saying what's right for the franchise you're playing for, but at the same time promoting your brand. And
right.
I do think that there's the potential to see more conflict there.
Agreed. Ken, if you were to advise someone, a kid came onto the scene, high school kid breaking out. We know what the NBA rules are now. You got to play 1 year at college. Maybe he's going to go overseas, like the kid Muday's doing this year, rather than going to Texas Tech. He's going to play in, I think it's either Japan or China. I'm not sure which. But he's going to play 1 year of Pro Bowl abroad and then come back and go into the NBA draft. If he asked you for advice for Twitter and how to increase his brand, starting from scratch, what's the first thing you got to do? What's the best thing you can do from Jump Street?
Well, if I was going to give that particular situation advice, I'd say the best thing you could do first is really dominate over where you're playing, because now wherever you stay becomes a lot more relevant and people are going to pay attention to it. If you're squeaking on Twitter and you're playing horrible, averaging a couple points a game, and everybody's saying you're going to be a bust and you're not going to even make it into the NBA, it's probably not going to be to your benefit. I really feel that Manziel really kind of made a lot more of a name for himself and a brand for himself. His play was obviously fantastic. He won the Heisman, but he really built his reputation of this kind of Joe Namath reincarnation through social media. So I think any advice I would give is, if you're going to talk a lot, you got to make sure you're playing well to be able to back it up.
Now, if someone, again, was in that type of situation, just beginning on Twitter and building up their following, as you say, it's all about you got to get done on the field first. But then you start to play well and you're getting that many more followers and people are talking about you in certain circles and the like. How do you resist the temptation of not replying to those who are going to take shots at you? You know that you're the one who everything's on the line for, and somebody's following you and they may be responding to things you say. We're all human, and none of us like criticism, and we all want to take a chance to defend ourselves. But once you get into a Twitter war, it could be one of the worst things that can happen to you. How do you tell a youngster who's just getting underway, you can't do it? You just got to get your message out.
I think when you get your message out, you can also indirectly speak to some of the critics without getting into kind of a battle over very specifics. You can talk to aspects of it, but not really address, some of the real finite areas that were obviously problematic and could only lead to kind of more comments. So I think the notion there is that you want to kind of speak to certain scenarios but maybe not be as detailed in other scenarios. It's almost like a good customer service that a company, if you call to complain, you see the customer service person, they're relatively scripted. They're trying to address your concern, but they're not spending a whole lot of time about the specific concern that you have. They're trying to talk big picture.
All right. Since you used the word scripted, which I like, Twitter is unscripted. Jeter's new website, theplayerstribune.com, just getting underway, has few contributors, but they expect to get plenty. That would be my only concern, is that it's going to come out as a little scripted. Long form will be good. Directly hearing from the players is good. You can get more information than you can at 140 characters a clip on Twitter. But I just have some concerns that it could be a bit scripted. Are my concerns justified?
I believe so, and I think you make a great point there. Ultimately, when you look at what's going to come out on the Players Tribune, it's going to have the athlete's going to have the ability to prepare that. It's going to be edited. It's going to be proofread. At the end of the day, the actual product that comes out is going to be very eloquent and look very nice in print, much like the Russell Wilson article did. Topic was pretty interesting. Topic was pretty much something that was thought-provoking, what Russell said. But at the end of the day, it wasn't as raw as other scenarios. Great example right now, what's going on with Adrian Peterson. Adrian Peterson's taking to Twitter to defend himself, even though he seems like he can't keep himself out of getting more and more hot water. I'm pretty confident that the Players Tribune no time soon is going to allow Adrian Peterson an opportunity to tell his side of the story, because I think certain areas probably are just not what that type of publication are going to really look to have.
If the Players Tribune is long form and Twitter is short form, what's the next form?
The next form, I think you're going to start to see more of a hybrid of the combination of both those scenarios, where you can kind of make those shorter comments in that type of direct fashion, but it can lead you to the ability to drill down and get more information. So I think ultimately we've got two kind of competing styles that at some point I think will ultimately evolve into what probably becomes a lot more of the option to see either. Some people like to read Cliff Notes. Some people like to read novels.
That's true. That is the difference right there. That's the cutting edge. Ken Wisnefski, our guest. If you want to check out Kenny's stuff, you got to go to his website, KenWisnefski, KenWisnefski.com. Kenny, thanks for a couple minutes of insight. I think you opened our eyes to a couple things. We appreciate that.
Thanks, Jody. It's great talking to you.
Our pleasure. Ken Wisnefski from WebiMax. That's his company. He founded it, CEO, and has done a lot of work at internet marketing. He's run a couple of companies, flipped them, made a whole bunch of money. He's got a new venture called WebiMax. Gave us some good insight to what Twitter and Ken, this new website that Derek Jeter is starting up, theplayerstribune.com, give us another way in, another entree to a player's line of thinking. Interesting stuff. Check out theplayerstribune.com as well.